Did the New York Giants' initial handling of the offensive line doom it for the season? And does it make sense for the Giants to pursue Bill Belichick if he is fired by the Patriots? That and more on today's Locked On Giants podcast, coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and I am coming to you on Wednesday. Today is the Wednesday show, November 15th. We're halfway through the month of November already. Boy, time is flying. It is absolutely flying. And a special shout out today to my everydayers, my first timers, my Blue Crew community, my exclusive supporters over at Locked On Giants, and everybody in between. I appreciate you all. Please like and subscribe to this podcast channel if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on our audio platforms, a 5-star rating would be appreciated if you have time to do so. On today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to talk about the offensive line. I've been doing some thinking about the offensive line and what's gone wrong for it this year when there was hope that it was upgraded. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to transition segment 2. There's a rumor that Bill Belichick of the New England Patriots is going to be leaving that organization after the season is over. A disappointing season for the Patriots. And some Giant fans have actually reached out to me and said, boy, wouldn't it be great if Belichick came back to the Giants? What do you think of that? I'm going to tell you what I think about that in segment 2. And then in segment 3, we'll close it out with, can the Giants win any more games this year? I mean, I know a lot of you are saying, nope, they should tank, don't win any more games. But we'll take a look at what's left and we'll see if there's any possibility that our Monday shows here on the Locked On Giants podcast will actually be of a, more positive nature as opposed to me talking about how bad they look the previous Sunday. So that's our agenda here on Locked On Giants on this Wednesday show. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's jump right in. And that offensive line, we got to start there. I see how everybody talks about the Giants need to upgrade the offensive line. I get the questions from you guys and gals. Why is it so hard for the Giants offensive line to finally get to where it needs to be? What are they doing wrong? I don't know in this case how much of that was a result of a lack of talent. Now, maybe, in terms of the depth, which I'll get to in a moment, but this past offseason, I got to confess, I thought once they added John Michael Schmitz to the equation to go with Andrew Thomas at left tackle, I thought maybe Evan Neal would work out, that he would be better than he was last year. You figured Mark Lewinsky would at least hold down the fort at right guard, and then they were looking to have Joshua Zudu step in at left guard as their permanent left guard. And it didn't work out that way, as we know. And a big part of it, obviously, is injuries. We can't, go anywhere without starting with the injuries. And the injuries, I think, is what exposed the depth of that offensive line. But before I get to that, I want to talk about how the offensive line was handled this offseason, because of all the things that this coaching staff did this past year to get this team ready. Their handling of the offensive line, to me, was one of the most baffling approaches or processes, if we use their word, that I've ever witnessed. All right. So I'm going to start off with, how they handled it in the summer training camp. The idea was to rotate guys around, get them experience at different positions. Okay, I'm fine with that. However, when it continued and it started to get late into the summertime, and you had guys, still rotating, still taking snaps at other spots, and you did not allow that offensive line to gel as a unit, to develop consistency, to develop cohesiveness, that's when I started screaming about what they were doing. And of course, throughout the summer, Brian Dable would tell us, oh, we're still looking for the best five. Well, if you don't know the best five, but by the time you're halfway through training camp, that's a problem. I mean, you've been working with these guys not only for, 3 or 4 weeks into training camp, you've been working with them also in the springtime. So how you can not have an idea what these guys are at least capable of doing basic skill-wise. Now, I know with the offensive line, you have to put the pads on. You have to hit somebody. That's how you can truly tell if an offensive line is going to be good. But just the other part of it, the mental part of the game, and why they just kept flipping guys around. And again, I know it was to get them experience at other positions in case there were injuries, which of course there have been. But I just think the fact that they did it basically right up until the end of training camp hurt the cohesiveness of this offensive line, which is why it's never really been able to gel. Now, here's the other thing that kind of bugged me about the handling of the offensive line. That is how they approached working with certain players. All right. So as part of their effort to find the right guys, they were still futzing with the offensive line in the 10 days or so before their week 1 game against Dallas. And during that time, you might recall, they decided, oh, let's play Joshua Ezeudu, who had never practiced at left tackle for the Giants in the year plus he had been with the team. I mean, yes, he had played it in college, but let's suddenly plug him in at left tackle, after Andrew Thomas goes down. How does that make sense? The guy had basically no experience at left tackle, didn't work at left tackle the entire summer, and they're going off of what he did in his college career. Not to mention, the kid was coming back from a neck injury. So how did that make sense? How did that prepare this offensive line in the event Andrew Thomas went down, which of course, unfortunately, he did? You look at Marcus McKethan, who came back about halfway through training camp after being on the PUP list with an ACL injury. He was plugged in right away. And, not even a chance to really ramp him up. It was more or less expedite him and get him in there. And oh, by the way, he was groomed to be the right guard. Now suddenly they were trying him at left guard, another position he hadn't played. So how was that, how did that make any sense? They moved guys around, I think for one game, if I'm not mistaken, Shane Lemieux was the starting center when John Michael Schmitz went down. If I'm not mistaken, I think Shane Lemieux had snaps, and he had never played starting center with the ones. So, for all the moving around that this coaching staff did of these players to get them ready, I'm not sure they did a good job, and the proof is in the pudding. Now, obviously, nobody was counting on injuries wiping out this unit. Nobody was counting on Andrew Thomas missing a big chunk of the games. Nobody was counting on Evan Neal missing several games, or John Michael Schmitz missing several games. I get that. But then you look at, again, some of the depth issues that they created. They cut Tyree Phillips, but they keep Matt Parrott. But yet when it came time earlier in the season to name the game day inactives, or to, designate who the next guys off the bench were, Parrott wasn't one of them. So how did all that make sense? And I just think, when we look back at the 2023 season and all that's gone wrong with this Giant team, yes, injuries are a big part of it. But the way this coaching staff handled getting this offensive line ready, and whether that's on Brian Dable, Bobby Johnson, or a combination of the two, it wasn't good, folks. And that's why this offensive line, you look at it, and I know people are saying, oh, they got to get new guys on this team. They should be okay with Schmitz and Thomas. I think Evan Neal ultimately will get kicked inside to right guard. I think at left guard, they would maybe like to give Ezeudu another shot at it. And then, that's if, of course, if Justin Pugh doesn't retire, and then just address right tackle. So they're maybe not as far off as you think, and then it's just a matter of filling out the depth a little bit. But that being said, I would hope moving forward, when the coaching staff puts this offensive line together next year, make an earlier decision on who you're going to go with, who your 5 are. Let them gel together, let them grow together, and stop futzing around and trying to be cute with keeping people guessing. Let people guess how to figure out how to stop these guys by watching their film. Don't play games. All right, coming up next, Bill Belichick might be getting fired from the New England Patriots. If he does, should the Giants think about bringing him home? We'll talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, right? So that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I myself have used LinkedIn Jobs in the past to find writers and editors for the Giants Country site that I run over on SI's Fan Nation, and the process is not only super easy, but a big time saver. Simply add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you'd like to interview and hire. So don't spend time sorting through endless resumes and dead-end leads. Put LinkedIn Jobs to work for you today for free by visiting linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Giant fans, score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 MONEYLINE bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is super easy to use, the payouts are quick, and everything is done securely. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and score big this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, P-Train. And on this segment, I've got to go there because I got a couple of inquiries from you guys. And this show is more about you guys and what you want to see and what you want to hear than is necessarily about what I think makes sense and what's the story and what's not a story. So I had a couple of people reach out to me and say, hey, Pat, the buzz up in New England is that Bill Belichick is probably not going to be back as head coach of the New England Patriots. And if that happens, should the Giants bring him home? Now, I think most of you know what I'm going to say. And it's no disrespect to anybody. Belichick, of course, a super architect of the Super Bowl 25 defensive effort against the Buffalo Bills. Absolute genius. If you don't know the story of it and you're interested in it, there's a chapter in my book about it. And also I've spoken about it many times before, but it was pure genius on Belichick's part. But anyway, to bring Belichick back just doesn't make sense. And here's why. Belichick, number one, besides the fact that who knows how much longer he's going to want to coach, being that he's 71 years old, does he want to coach for another 10 years, however many years? Probably, you don't want to have to go through the risk of potentially having to turn over your coaching staff again in a short amount of time. Whereas with Brian Daboll, if he ultimately works out, maybe you get him for, 10 years plus. But more importantly, here's this. You have to ask yourself, how much did Tom Brady influence the success that Belichick had in New England? Now, I don't want to take away what Belichick has done. So please don't misunderstand me here. But ever since Brady left the Patriots after the 2019 season, the Patriots have not had a winning record. They've only been to the playoffs once, and they lost, that being a wild card game, I think in 2021, and I think to the Buffalo Bills. So you also look at the struggles that they've had with Mac Jones, their quarterback, and how he hasn't really developed the way they anticipated or would have liked him to have developed. These, to me, are all kind of red flags as to, if we're making an argument for or against Belichick coming to the Giants, those would be among them. Here's the biggest reason why I don't think it makes sense. First off, I think, if Belichick decides he does want to continue coaching, I could see the Chargers or the Bucks maybe making a play for him. All right. Or maybe even Washington, if Washington decides to go, to move on from Ron Rivera, not the Giants. John Mara, the team owner, who, of course, was around when Belichick was on Bill Parcells' staff. I know he thinks very highly of Belichick. I know there's still that bond, that relationship. But that said, I do not see the Giants turning over this coaching staff and the GM after 2 years. I just don't see it. It doesn't make sense. It means starting all over again. And how many times are you going to want to restart with this franchise? Just because they restarted, after every 2 years with a new coaching staff doesn't mean that they've made it better. If anything, they've made it worse. They wasted Daniel Jones's rookie contract. They wasted some of the better years, early years of Saquon Barkley and some other guys. You can't keep doing that. So, a lot of people will have chimed in and said, oh, the Giants should fire Brian Daboll. They should fire Joe Schoen. They created this mess. All right, maybe so. But, sometimes you got to create a mess. You have to kind of blow things up a little bit before you find the pieces within the rubble that you're going to rebuild with. It's kind of like if you take a wrecking ball to a house, maybe you're only blowing out one wall, but you're keeping the other walls, and you're going to build around, you're going to make a wider wall, or you're going to expand the length or whatever. So that's what the Giants need to do. And, the mistake I think the Giants made, quite honestly, when they did switch over to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, is they probably should have given them free rein on the quarterback to say, okay, you know what? We've got two first-round draft picks coming up. Let's think about maybe a new quarterback. Well, they didn't go in that direction. They stuck with Daniel Jones. They wanted to give Daniel Jones a fair shake. And of course, last year he proved that he could be the guy. And then he got the contract. And then, of course, this year, we all know what happened. There was the neck injury, the second one in 3 years, and now the ACL. And now Daniel Jones's future with this team very much up in the air, especially with the Giants potentially poised to have a top 5 draft pick if they continue to lose. So, to me, just getting back to the Belichick issue, I think if the Giants were in a different time and a different place, maybe it might make more sense. And if Belichick, had a little bit better record, more success after Tom Brady, you might make that case. But I don't see the Giants moving on from Daboll and Schoen. I think they give them another year, possibly another 2 years, to fix all this, get the team back on track, headed in the right direction. Belichick, if he does depart from the Patriots, and again, it's not confirmed, but that seems to be what a lot of the Patriot beat writers seem to be thinking is going to happen. If he does move on, if he wants to coach again, he'll get a job somewhere. I mean, the man's a future Hall of Famer, I think. But I just don't think that job is going to be with the New York Giants, no matter how much some Giant fans out there would love for that happy ending for the man who helped the Giants win 2 Super Bowls, their first 2 Super Bowls in franchise history. All right, coming up next, the Giants have 7 games left. Is there any chance they'll win any of them? We'll run down the list and we'll talk about it, so don't go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking for a fun and different way to play fantasy football this season, you need to check out Prize Picks. Just pick 2 or more players, predict their stats, and sit back and see how they perform. It takes less than 60 seconds to make an entry, and best of all, you can turn a few bucks into some nice cash with the right projections. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app, known for its quick and easy withdrawals, easy gameplay, and wide selection of players and stat types. And they offer weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, when each Tuesday Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So what are you waiting for? Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and that promo code is LockedOnNFL for your first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Hey, Giant fans, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Trena. And coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast tomorrow, Crossover Thursday, David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and I will break down this weekend's Giants-Washington game. A lot has changed for the Commanders, having made some big trades at the trade deadline. The Giants, meanwhile, we'll see. I mean, in the past, they've had luck against the Commanders. They've had their number. They've had success. The odds makers aren't favoring the Giants this week, after the Giants had their doors blown off by the Cowboys. But hey, any given Sunday, as they say. So anyway, on that note, we're going to talk about these remaining 7 games, and might the Giants be able to win a few of them? And you're probably saying to yourself, no way. They're done. They're cooked. They might not win another game. And then there might be some of you who are saying, God, they've got a tank for draft picks. And y'all know how I feel about that feeling, by the way. I don't believe in tanking. I don't think Brian Daboll believes in it. I don't think the organization believes in it. So those of you who want them to lose purposely, I'm sorry. You won't get me to agree on that. I think you have to go out and you have to play. You can't, that's disrespectful to an athlete who's a competitor, to tell him, lay down and die and not put up a fight against your opponent. That's just not respectful, in my opinion. But anyway, let's talk about these last 7 games and if the Giants could potentially eke out a win somewhere. Now, for the record, I said on my social media account that I will probably not be picking the Giants at all the rest of the year to win any games. I gave them the benefit of the doubt earlier. I got burnt. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. All right. So I'm not going to pick them to win. I'm telling you now. That being said, where can they potentially win games? Where can they be competitive enough to where maybe they can squeak out a win? Well, let's start with Washington this weekend. As I mentioned before, the Giants have had Washington's number. They've had success against them. So if they were going to win a game, this weekend might be a good one, especially now that Washington has traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young. So maybe that takes a little bit easy on the Giants offensive line, which continues to struggle. Can the Giants beat the New England Patriots in week 12? The Patriots are pretty bad this year. So, if you're looking for a possible win, that could be one. Although, again, I think that's going to come down to a coaching battle, to be honest with you. All right, then there's the bye week. Everybody wins during the bye week, including yours truly. Yay. Then week 14 is Green Bay Monday Night Football. I don't think the Giants eke that one out. I'd be surprised. Although I think that is the first game that Tyrod Taylor would be eligible to come back off of IR. Tyrod Taylor, remember, needs to miss 4 weeks. He missed last week. He'll miss Washington, New England, and the bye. So that'll be the remaining 3 weeks of his 4-week minimum stay on IR. So if he is healthy and he comes back for that Green Bay game, maybe they have a chance. But otherwise, I'm not so confident that the Giants will pull that one off. Then the Giants see New Orleans. Nope, don't see a win there. Not at New Orleans. I just don't see it. Then they had to close out the season 2 games against the Eagles, sandwiched around a game against the Los Angeles Rams. Could they beat the Rams? The Rams haven't been doing really good, but you know what? I've got to give a slight edge to the Rams there. I think the Rams can beat the Giants. And as far as the Eagles go, Giants aren't beating the Eagles. The only way, and this is a big if, is if the Eagles have a playoff berth wrapped up to where it doesn't matter and they sit some of their starters. And even then, folks, I think you can make the argument that a lot of the Eagle backups might be better than the Giants starters at this stage. So I'm not counting on a whole lot more wins. I think maybe at most the Giants win 2 more games. And that's me being optimistic. And I hate to be, to be like that as far as, putting the team down, but I'm trying to be realistic here. This is a lost season. And they just don't have the firepower they need to be competitive in these remaining games. And at this point, just end the season. Let's get to the off season. Let's start talking about how to fix this team. Let's start talking about the draft. We still got 7 weeks to go, so we'll follow, the course here. But I know I'm ready to turn the page, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. So we'll just do what we can here, as we always do. And again, I appreciate you tuning in and listening. And I hope that, we're able to bring you better shows as far as being more upbeat, but such is the hand the team has been dealt with. So anyway, that will do it for us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Again, don't forget to tune in tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. Always a great conversation with David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. We'll get you ready for that game. And then, of course, we'll have a show for you on Friday before we send you into the weekend to enjoy it. So until then, everybody, thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.